listening to Living with ADHD and CPTSD, available on Apple and wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Living with ADHD and CPTSD. So today I'm going to talk about motivation when it comes to ADHD, as I'm sure many of us who have ADHD often feel lack of motivation whenever it comes to doing any sort of difficult task or job or something that needs to get done, whether it's in your house or at the workplace, until there's pressure or timeline, like a deadline. And I'm going to discuss this with you guys, and I'm also going to discuss my own issues with motivation and how sometimes I can get things done, no problem, do a bunch of work, and then there are other times and days where it feels like I don't want to really do anything. So yeah, let's discuss this. I'm going to read an article or two, and hopefully this will be some really good information for you to help you. All right. The mystery of ADHD motivation solved. Why do adults and children with ADHD or ADD have strong motivation and executive function for some tasks and never find the cognitive spark to do others? Despite the many differences among children and adults with attention deficit disorder, there is one similarity shared by virtually all of them. Although they have considerable chronic difficulty in getting organized and getting started on many tasks, focusing their attention, sustaining their efforts, and utilizing their short-term working memory, all of those diagnosed with ADHD tend to have at least a few specific activities or tasks for which they have no difficulty in exercising these very same functions in a normal or an extraordinary way. The inconsistency in motivation and performance is the most puzzling aspect of ADHD. It seems like the child or adult with the disorder who can show strong motivation and focus very well for some tasks should be able to do the same for most other tasks that they recognize as important. It appears as if this is a simple problem of lacking willpower. If you can do it for this, why can't you do it for the same for that and that, which are even more important? However, ADHD is not a matter of willpower. It is a problem with the dynamics of the chemistry of the brain. One of my patients once told me, "I've got a sexual metaphor that you can use to explain what it's like to have ADHD. It's like having erectile dysfunction of the mind. If the task you are faced with is something that turns you on, something that is really interesting for you, you are up for it, and you can perform. But if the task is not something that is intrinsically interesting to you, if it doesn't turn you on and you can't get up for it and you can't perform, it doesn't matter how much you tell yourself I need to or I ought to, it's just not a willpower kind of thing." Recent research offers considerable evidence that ADHD is not a willpower thing, even though in many ways it appears to be a lack of willpower. When individuals with ADHD are faced with a task that is really interesting to them, not because someone told them that it ought to be interesting, but because it is interesting to them at that moment, that perception, conscious or unconscious, changes the chemistry of the brain instantly. This process is not under voluntary control. The willpower assumption is based on two fundamental misunderstandings of how the human brain works. This assumption ignores the complex and powerful role of unconscious emotions in the brain's processes of motivation, and it does not recognize the critical importance of working memory for prioritizing tasks moment by moment. The primary difference between Google searches and any given individual's motivations Beyond the obvious differences in the size of the information database is the process by which relevance and prioritizing of information is determined. Google prioritizes based on the relevance of manifest content and on the frequency of demand in similar searches by others. The primary basis on which humans prioritize information is the emotion associated with conscious and unconscious memories activated by the individual's thoughts and perceptions at any given moment. Your emotional brain. In 1996, neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux published The Emotional Brain, a book highlighting the central importance of emotion in the brain's cognitive functioning. He emphasized that emotions, mostly unconscious emotions, are powerful and critically important motivators of the human thought and actions. This understanding of the essential role of emotion in all aspects of human motivation and behavior has not been adequately integrated into current thinking about ADHD. Emotions, positive and negative, play a critical role in executive functions, initiating and prioritizing tasks, sustaining or shifting interest or effort, holding thoughts in active memory, and choosing to avoid a task or situation. Whereas Google responds to queries typed into the search engine, the human brain responds to the quality and intensity of emotions attached to associated memories. Many people think of emotions as involving only conscious feelings, limited to sensations of sadness, anger, pleasure, worry, and so on, that a person is fully aware of and generally able to identify. Neuroscience has shown that conscious feelings are only a tiny part of the variegated range of emotions that operates within each person to motivate executive functions. Neuroscientist Joaquin Fuster emphasized, where we may be fully conscious of a retrieved memory, the vast majority of memories that we retrieve remain unconscious. Often these unconscious emotions conflict and cause us to act in ways that are inconsistent with our recognized conscious intentions. An undercurrent of conflicting emotions is often involved in our failure to do tasks that we believe we want to do, or indirectly engaged in actions that we consciously believe we do not want to do. Sometimes a person thinks of a particular task as important, honestly believing that he wants to give it immediate attention and sustained effort, yet he does not act accordingly. He may continue to procrastinate, busying himself with work on other tasks that are not as urgent, or he may actively seek out distractions by getting in touch with friends, surfing the internet, getting high, or going to sleep. Such contradictions make sense only when we realize that the emotions that guide our motivations are not fully conscious or conflicting. We may be influenced by emotions that we do not know we have. Motivation factors. The most basic factor contributing to the ability of persons with ADHD to focus very well and efficiently utilize their executive functions on some tasks while being chronically unable to focus adequately on most other tasks is a problem of the neural transmission. For many years, it has been recognized that individuals with ADHD tend to chronically have insufficient release and reloading of the neurotransmitter dopamine at synaptic junctions of neurons in the networks that manage executive functions. Many students have demonstrated that treatment with stimulant medications improves the efficiency of neural communication. However, this increased release and slowed reloading is not under voluntary control. It occurs only for those tasks in which the individual with ADHD has a strong interest. The heightened interest may be because that activity has brought pleasure or other rewards to the person in the past. Or interest may be intensified because the person fears that something he or she anticipates as being unpleasant is likely to occur very quickly if he or she does not attend to the task immediately. Whether because of anticipated pleasure or fear, the heightened interest generates increased release of dopamine instantly and sustains it for as long as the intensified interest persists. The second factor that influences the ability to pay attention to some tasks but not to others is the relative weakness in working memory that is characteristic of many persons with ADHD. Working memory is essential for keeping in mind relative priorities of our various interests at any given time. Social psychological research has shown that individuals with larger working memory capacity are generally better to able to deal with emotions, pleasant and unpleasant, without getting excessively caught up in them. Those with ADHD tend to have less bandwidth in their working memory functions and are likely to have more difficulty than others in quickly linking together various memories relevant to doing or not doing a task. They are less likely to take into account the bigger picture of which the present moment is a part. They operate more like someone watching a basketball game through a telescope, unable to take into account the rest of the action on the court, the threats and or opportunities that are not included in the small circle of focus provided by their telescope. Okay. Running away from stressful situations. It was a difficult exam, and Jim was having a lot of trouble answering most of the questions, possibly because he had not read even half of the chapters assigned for the test. Jim had put off doing any work on the exam for several days. He had been preoccupied with an email from his girlfriend back home. She wrote that she wanted to break up because he was now too far away and had gotten involved with someone else, and she had. At 2 a.m., after struggling with the exam for several hours, Jim decided to take a nap for a couple of hours and try to finish the exam when he woke up. He set his alarm for 4 a.m. When the alarm buzzed, Jim woke up for a few moments, turned the alarm off, and went back to sleep. He did not wake up until 5 hours later. When he realized he had slept through the deadline, Jim panicked. The professor had announced that he would not accept any late exams. Recognizing that he would certainly get an F on the midterm, Jim impulsively decided he was not ready to be in college. Without discussing his decision with anyone, he packed his suitcase and left to go home, planning to stay there until the following fall, when he would try again to go to college. I'm taking with me back home about this a week later. Jim said that dropping out of college was the best thing for him at that point. He said had he been excited to go off to college, but the work seemed too hard for him. He had not yet made any real friends, and he had really been missing his girlfriend and his parents. He also claimed that getting an F on the midterm would have meant failing that course, so it made no sense for him to continue any of his courses that semester. He could see no other way to deal with the situation. He also mentioned that in coming home, he had hoped he could win back his girlfriend's affections. As it turned out, she was not interested in getting re-involved. It was a pattern that Jim hadn't recognized. Jim had quit many activities before. He was quick to feel unsure of himself and quick to get himself out of any situation where he was afraid he might not do well. He was biased towards early escape from stress. Only after several months of psychotherapy was Jim able to see that his accidental going back to sleep that morning, his failure to even discuss his situation with his college advisor, and an assumption that he faced inevitable failure were not actually the best choices for him. Alright, so let's just talk about this real quickly, and then we'll move on. It's well known that when we don't have any motivation, like if it's not something that we really like to do, like if it's not a high priority kind of event, or if it's not something that we love, like let's say playing sports, so like to play football or like to play hockey, or we like to go out and play with our friends, like video games or dirt biking or something, we're way more motivated to be successful at going and doing this kind of thing, this sort of task, I guess you could say, or activity, than if we got home and we were informed that we, at some point in the next few hours before we go to bed, that we were told that we had to clean the dishes, and put the food away for the dinner. We're not as motivated to do something like that because it isn't something that we really, really want to do. We would rather go out and get some fresh air or play games or do something that is fun for us, that we like and we find motivating. And the thing is that, as I explained, or I read in the article, is motivation levels, if there's no dopamine hit, you soon find yourself not really willing to go through with it, or you quit early because your level of excitement for the activity that you're doing quickly goes away because it becomes kind of repetitive, and eventually it becomes boring unless you're super into it, like it's your absolute talent, the thing you love to do, and you've never given it up, which is not exactly something that there's a lot of. So it's maybe one or two things that you do on a day-to-day basis. Unless it's something like that, there's a good chance that a lot of the things that you pick up on, like new hobbies or a new job or even a new relationship, you soon lose interest and you start to wane on that level of motivation because you're finding it to be repetitive. You're finding it to be boring. You're finding it to not raise your interest and not keep you interested because it's not difficult. There's no challenge. So it's a very common thing for a lot of people who have ADHD. They just soon find themselves losing interest because the chemical imbalance in their head, you get that dopamine for the first little bit, and then it starts to wane off as it becomes every day a common thing. It's no longer new. It's no longer special like it used to be. So that's why. That's to put it in layman terms, I guess, if you want to say. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and then when I get back, I will continue talking about motivation with ADHD. Four things that motivate an ADHD brain. This is a different article that I have. You know the feeling. There is a list as long as your arm. It's all important. It's all stuff that you definitely should do. It's all things that you want to have done. You don't even mind doing some of the things. But it's just not happening. Your mind is fuzzy. Your body feels drained, and there is a voice screaming in your head, "Oh, hell no." You know that if you could get started, you would feel so much better. You could make some progress and feel better going to bed tonight. You would feel less anxious. You would feel better about yourself. What's the deal? Why can't you get yourself off the couch and into motion? Getting started, what psychologists call initiation, is one of the hardest things for the ADHD brain. It's a huge energy expense. It's getting a ball from standing stone to still to rolling. Once it is going, it's not nearly as much energy to keep it rolling, but the initial push, that's hard. The thing is, though, with an ADHD brain, the vast majority of tasks, even ones you kind of enjoy, aren't just getting a ball rolling, but it's getting a ball rolling uphill. And some tasks, like taxes or cleaning out your garage, turn that ball into a really heavy boulder. The ADHD brain isn't motivated in the same way as a neurotypical brain. It doesn't respond to should and ought to. It doesn't hear "it would be better if," and instead responds to the present moment. And in the present moment, it always feels better to stay still than to move. So still it stays, unless there is something really good driving it forward, something that gets it going, something that turns that uphill slog into a gentle, smooth, downhill slope that the ball can gently roll down with minimal effort. So, what is it that gets the ADHD brain rolling? Pressure. Pressure is the motivator that we all walk around with sitting in our back pocket, ready to pull out as needed. It's the easiest to manufacture and one thing that you can rely on. Well, most of the time. Pressure is the paper due tomorrow morning. It's your boss calling for the report that was due 3 weeks ago, and it's your wife crying about a forgotten anniversary. It's the most commonly used motivator because it's the easiest to manufacture. Don't feel like starting that project right now? Wait a few weeks, a few hours before it's due. It's going to feel much more compelling. Pressure comes in 3 forms. Interpersonal pressure. This is the pressure put on you by other people, either because of their need or disappointment or anger. It is your husband's mounting frustration about the forgotten dry cleaning, or the insistent tugging of your toddler at the hem of your shirt while you desperately try to beat that next level of Candy Crush. Time pressure. This is the age-old favorite and the effective result of procrastination. This is waiting until the night before the paper is due or the desperate all-nighter before a big presentation. Time pressure allows the ADHD brain to zoom in on what is important and ignore all the rest. Financial pressure. Financial pressure keeps you accountable by putting pressure on your bank account. It is the premise behind late fees and cancellation policies. It is, however, the least powerful pressure for the ADHD brain because it doesn't respond nearly as well to punishment as it does reward. That being said, if the financial pressure gets big and meaningful enough, it can kick the ADHD brain into gear pretty quickly. Each form of pressure can happen naturally if you wait long enough. Let enough time pass, and April 15th is sure to come along. Let that Amazon return your husband has been asking you to bring in hang out on the counter long enough, and he is sure to start bugging you and forget to pay the electric bill, and the late fees will start piling up. You don't have to manufacture pressure because it will inevitably roll around. Interests, passion. What ADHDer hasn't heard, either from themselves or someone close to them, why can you enter your favorite activity, but you can't enter boring, repetitive, seemingly pointless activity here? It can be confusing. You can get going, focus, and become completely engaged with the things that interest you, but switch that thing out with something that doesn't have the intrinsic pleasure or drive, and the train comes to a screeching halt. Interest and passion turn the ADHD brain on. It gets the brain moving and drives it towards that interest. This means that the initiation hurdle, the thing that blocks you from starting, is more like a very gentle speed bump. When you are interested in a task, you may not even notice it's there. A task that holds little interest, though, that initiation hurdle might as well be a 2-story wall. The amount of energy it takes to scale feels close to impossible. Competition. My husband, an avid cyclist, came in from a ride a few months ago, looking extra worn out. When I asked him about his ride, he told me that on his way home, a 20-year-old guy passed him on a road bike. Now, did my husband consider his own age or that he was riding a much slower, heavier mountain bike? No, of course not. He powered up and chased after him, practically killing his 40-year-old body in the process. Competition turns the ADHD brain on. It gets excited and active, and all of a sudden, the struggle is about winning rather than starting effectively demolishing the initiation hurdle. Now, not everyone responds to competition. There are several psychological factors that can make competition grind even an ADHD brain to a screeching halt. So, if this doesn't work for you, you are not alone. But for those brains that do respond, it can be a powerful motivator. Novelty. There are a few things more compelling than something shiny and new. I see it every day with my boys. They will, without a moment's hesitation, put down their most prized possession in exchange for practically anything they haven't seen before. Our brains are primed to explore novelty. It's part of what helps us learn and part of what keeps us safe. The ADHD brain has the same draw towards the novel, but it is done with even greater zeal and abandon. So new relationships, new projects, new ideas, and new tasks, they all get the ADHD brain going and on fire. Novelty ignites that innocent, childlike learner that wants to explore and grow. It gets the creative juices flowing and gets the brain excited. This excitement rewards the brain with a healthy dose of dopamine, which then keeps it moving. See, like I said. Unfortunately, novelty obviously wears off. So you need to find ways to manufacture more momentum once the new gets you started. But getting started, that is more than half the battle. Knowing what motivates your ADHD brain helps you get into action and avoid the things that will naturally take your attention. 20 ways to hack your brain's motivation. Something that could be very helpful. It's a Tuesday and you have a massive report due next Friday. This is the one that stands between you and the promotion you have been working towards for the past 3 years. You know it is essential. You know you want extra time so that you can edit it and polish it before you turn it in. And you know you really should start it today. But you just can't get started. It's as if your brain is staring up a 2-story wall with the project on the other side. It knows it needs to get to the other side, but feels powerless to scale it. So what's an ADHD brain to do? It needs a push, a leg up, or maybe a sturdy ladder, and a huge amount of energy to get over that initiation hurdle. How does it find that energy? Manufactured motivation. This is where understanding what motivates you and your ADHD brain comes in handy, because you can leverage the 4 pillars of motivation: novelty, interest, competition, and pressure to get yourself into action. So let's explore some of the possible ways of using the unique ADHD motivators to your advantage. 20 surefire ways to manufacture motivation when your ADHD brain's got nothing. All right, using pressure. Manufacture deadlines. Deadlines almost always provide momentum to cross the hurdle of initiation. The downside of waiting for the natural deadline pressure is it usually only allows enough time for the bare minimum to get done. It doesn't allow for finesse, polishing, editing, and such. To provide the time to get done what you really want to do, manufactured deadlines becomes your best friend. By just telling yourself that something is due 3 days before it really is won't work. Your brain knows that's just a trick. Asking someone you really respect, however, someone you don't want to disappoint, to read, listen, look at a piece of your report a few days before it is due, just make sure you schedule that exact time and exact thing you'll give them. This creates an artificial deadline in advance of your due date and a little extra feedback. All right, 20 ways to manufacture motivation for your brain. Change the time of day for the task. Switch your mode of learning. Switch up your location while working. Use your smartwatch to create fitness or nutritional competition. Create a financial competition. Study with a friend and give them permission to keep you on task. Listen to audio recordings while walking or exercising. Apply a topic you love to a task you dread. That didn't quite make sense. Work outside. Find an accountability buddy. Take notes with colored pens. Draw pictures and graphs. Pair something you love with a task you dread. Keep an image of financial investment as a reminder. Create a financial contract. Join an accountability group. Use a study buddy or body double. Announce your intention to people you care about. Find an accountability buddy. Manufacture deadlines with someone you respect. All right. So it's amazing how all these things can work. They're not all going to work for everybody. Some work better for others, and then obviously the other ones will work better for other people. Of course, it's not all the same. So, yeah, like using interest. You like being outside. Well, try working in a quiet courtyard on a beautiful day. You like art and design? Take notes with colored pens. Make it look pretty. Are you really social? Well, then work with a study buddy who knows the rules around chatting and distracting and will easily hold you to them. Is there a way to pair the task with a topic you love? For example, studying business strategy? Apply what you are learning to a brand you love or a hobby you adore. Love to exercise? Then listen to the book you need to read on Audible while running or walking. All right, so novelty. Switch up your location while working. try tethering to your phone's internet and go work in a park on a beautiful day. If you can't leave your office, try working in a conference room for a few hours. Switch between a few different coffee shops or libraries during a work from home day. Switch up the mode of learning. Listen to audiobooks or podcasts. Read physical books. Take notes. Talk through new ideas with a colleague. Change your mindset. If you can't change anything else related to the task, take a break, walk away, and come back to it fresh. Think about what you can learn from this batch of work that is different from the last. What new way can you engage in the task? Change who you work with. Bring in fresh ideas and perspectives, or just a fresh person sitting beside you. Change the time of day you do a task. Doing typical evening tasks first thing, or reserving mid-morning tasks for early evening. Having a task on the horizon that needs to get done but holds no natural motivation? Think through the things that naturally turn your brain on. What is it that really gets you moving and over those huge hurdles? Is it pressure, novelty, competition, or interest? This is your strongest personal motivator. This is what you want to start when manufacturing motivation. In what ways can you use your motivating factors to create the push to get you going? What can you do to keep the ball rolling through to completion? Play around with a bunch of them, mix and match, or try a few at all at the same time. They may not all work the same degree each time, but keep working with them and you'll find some real motivation mojo before you know it. There we go. Okay. That was actually kind of fun to read, and it gave you guys some information. This is a really entertaining podcast. It's kind of a fun one. Nice way to get going. I had a bit of a rough weekend. On Friday, I had a tooth infection get real bad on me. And I had to go to an emergency doctor or dentist because the main dentist that I normally went to see was not having an appointment until Tuesday, which was a couple days ago. And I'm getting different opinions, so now I'm having to decide if I want to remove it or if I just have the root canal redone. It's frustrating because there was an infection in the tooth that had already been root canaled. So make sure you keep an eye on your teeth. And that is one thing with ADHD actually, is that it's hard to remember at times to brush your teeth. And I'm actually pretty good at it, but there have been times where I forget to do it. And I go to bed and wake up the next morning and go, oh shoot, I forgot to brush my teeth. So yeah, you got to find motivation or help to make you make sure that you get it done. Okay, I'll just discuss real quick my own issues with motivation. So I like to think I'm kind of unique in a way when it comes to motivating myself. Let's see. In I think it was the winter of 2017, I was kind of not the healthiest that I could have been. I ate a lot. I wasn't very healthy when it came to my diet, and I weighed 244 pounds, which for my body frame, and if you saw the photos, was quite heavy. It wasn't gigantic. I wasn't oh my God, look at him, walking around like he's gonna fall through the ground. But I was definitely overweight, and you could tell, and I wasn't feeling very good, and I felt kind of sluggish, and I just didn't have motivation. And true, some of that was probably trauma related, but I just was lazy. I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, and I just dealt with it through eating. But anyway, I went and the doctor did some tests and came back, and there were a lot of numbers that were in alarming rates, and he was pretty concerned, and it was scary, almost like a slap in the face, hey, you know what? If you keep this up, you're gonna have health issues very shortly here. You better start, improving your life. And so I finally said enough is enough. And I know in my past I had said it before. If you were to see my Facebook page, like the history, there were 1 or 2 times where I declared that I was going to change my diet. I was going to stop doing this and eat better. And then it didn't really happen. So this was different. I think it was just being scared of health problems coming up. And it was a motivational factor that I decided to completely overhaul how I ate. I cut out a lot of things that were definitely not healthy. And I also got into the swimming pool. I decided I was going to swim every day. And I was going to improve and get better and continue doing it and use that as my way of getting my exercise. And it just happened to be when it was the winter time. So obviously it's pretty difficult to get out and walk and on a constant basis because of the fact that it can be really cold here. We can get extremely cold, and it's not something that people want to deal with, especially if they have to exercise. So yeah, I drive to the pool. So I remember it was very difficult to get going, and I didn't get I wasn't exactly swimming for very long. I did two laps of the pool, and I was just so exhausted that I had to stop. But I kept coming back and over, and the motivation that kept me coming back was the fact that I started seeing myself lose weight. I would weigh myself and kept going, and I noticed that I was starting to drop, and I'm going, hey, this is starting to work. And also the fact that I was increasing my lengths. I was able to get to more than 2, and then I was able to do them consecutively, and then eventually I moved up. I don't remember how long it took exactly. I think it was a couple months. I got to 10, and I was taking a break in between every 2 or 3. And then it just kept going, and I just kept losing weight, and I kept getting stronger, and my arm, which was always making noises and was hurting from the rotation in the pool, because I do have shoulder related problems, stopped hurting, and the movement was free of pain. And all of a sudden I'm going, hey, this is working. So all this good feeling, all the good chemicals, the dopamine was in my head and supplying me with continuing the motivation. And it just kept going. I didn't quit. I think at one time I went 19 days straight, consecutive days swimming without a break in between. And the reason that I think I stopped is the pool was closed. I hardly ever missed. It was very rare. There were some days that I was really tired or sore and I couldn't get going, but most of the time I was able to keep myself moving. And it was awesome. I remember I went to see my naturopath doctor that spring, and I think it was April. And so I had been swimming for about 5 months. And I was down to, I think it was 206, or something like that. I dropped quite a bit of weight. I may not be accurate here, as that was a while ago. And I just remember I got test results back. I did another blood test, and the numbers were all extremely better. Everything was back to normal. Everything was great. I had to get the naturopath to do it because my doctor didn't say anything. He didn't call in and, call me and say anything. So I wasn't sure what was going on. But the naturopath looked at all the test results, and it was just, she was so impressed. She was so proud of me, and I was losing weight, and my diet was improving. I just felt better. I felt motivated, and I literally swam almost every day, and during the summer, and when I went to Saskatchewan, I would go swimming at the pool in Saskatoon. And I think it was like the fall, I was down to like 195 pounds. And it was shocking. I had lost 50 pounds. You could tell I looked better. I was in great shape. I felt good. I had energy. The food I was eating was healthy. And then all of a sudden in December, I hurt my ankle. I really hurt my ankle really bad. I slipped and I stepped on it and it turned, and it was, oh my God, the pain was insane. And I wasn't able to swim for over a month. And so what I ended up doing is, while I wasn't in the pool, I started to work out. I went to the gym and I lifted weights, and I get strong fast. Like I improve. I get up in the weight really quick. Like, it's amazing. I don't know why it is, but I move up in the weights. Like, I increase the amount, and it doesn't take very long. I take 1-2 times, two rep or days before, and then resting before I'm like trying more, and it worked, and I'm keep going, and it was amazing. So that was motivating me, because I could feel that I was getting stronger and it was improving. And it's just, sometimes you lose motivation. I don't exactly know what it was. Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. I hurt my shoulder. I was doing a pull down for triceps, and I think it kind of jarred back up unexpectedly. And there was a muscle in the shoulder that kind of got hurt. And I just remember I was able to complete that set of reps for the day. And then I went into the gym, and that wasn't what I was doing that day. So the second day, like 2 days later when I came back, I couldn't do the movement. And I just remember going, oh shit, I had a hard time doing a lot of the workouts, like a lot of the different exercises that I did. And I had to stop. And I just kind of started to lose the motivation. And I had hit a peak. I wasn't losing any more weight. I was in the middle of a motivation, and there was some stressful times during that point, and I just didn't feel the same. Something was missing. And so that happened. And I have moments where you just wake up and you just, like, your brain isn't functioning. You feel foggy and you feel tired and you just don't feel yourself. And so you do as minimal amount of moving as possible. You don't want to cook. You don't want to truly try to do any decent work. You just go and do as little as possible. So I had really no motivation to do anything, which kind of sucked, but that's just the way the brain works. And then last summer, and it's hard to believe that it's already nearly last summer, I remember we moved into the house and the temperature was extremely warm. We hadn't had temperatures. We haven't really had temperatures like we had in any time. Like, I can't remember the last time we were up that high. We hit a high of 37 degrees Celsius on the moving day. I don't know what that is. I think that's like about 100 degrees, or it's pretty damn close to 100 in Fahrenheit. And for Edmonton, Alberta, which is north of the border by a good 4.5, 5 hour drive, that's not normal. That is not a normal temperature for Edmonton. So there were a lot of health warnings. We had extreme heat warnings. BC, just to the west of us, the province over, broke national records. They literally had hit, I think it was like 48 or 49 degrees. And then like a couple days later, the town burned down because of the forest fires. So we weren't even getting the worst of it. But yeah, like I just remember a day or two later, I weighed myself, and because I was 212 at that time, I had gained a bit of weight back, and I noticed that all of a sudden I was like 205. And I'm like, what the heck? I lost some weight. We've been eating relatively healthier than before. And it suddenly, like the nature and the trails that we live around, it was like a motivational factor again, like a new motivational factor for me to get out and move. And so I started going out on walks, long walks with the dog. I'd take the bike out and go ride and push, because I like to push when I'm riding. And I did this all the time. And before I knew it, I'm watching, and sure, the weight's going down. And then it was like that, I think it was December, I was down, I finally broke the 200 pound barrier, and I was down below 200. And I'm like, this is great. I'm aiming towards a number. I can do this. I know I can get there. So we're still eating healthy. I'm still getting out. It is colder, but I'm still managing to get out there. And the weight just keep dropping. A few weeks ago, I weighed myself, and the weight that I was at was 179 pounds. I know. It is a 5-year period, but going from 244 to 179 pounds is incredible. And like right now I'm sitting at that roughly 180, 181, and we're still eating healthy. There's so much motivation, like staying healthy, exercise, like feeling good. Look the way I look, like I can't remember the last time I looked this thin, and it's so much nicer and so much, and like I can fit the clothes that used to fit on me that were snug are now loose. It's actually pretty funny. But yeah, like motivation, it's amazing what motivation can do for someone who has ADHD. It really can drive you. It's just that in order to keep it going, you have to become creative. You have to come up with ideas and new ways to reinvent that motivation. Because if you don't, if you just keep doing the same thing over and over, it will eventually wear off, and you will stop having that same desire and that same intense feeling to get going and do it. Because sooner or later it will wear out. And that's where creative people need, like if you have a creative mind, you have to find ways to change it up. You have to find ways to turn that motivational factor back up another notch or two so that you can keep it going. It's okay to take a couple days off, change things up, take a bit of a break, but you've got to find ways to keep yourself motivated. Because a lot of people out there that I've read on Twitter and talked to, where they start a new hobby and they have a lot of fun and they do it for a month or 2 months, maybe half a year, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't feel as exciting as it used to be, and so they stop doing it. And next thing you know, there's like an artist book sitting in the corner that you haven't worked on in months, and you just look at it and you're going, oh, I'd like to get back to it, but then you never do. I have to admit, I have that issue. I do like to draw, and I, for the longest time, did a ton of drawing, and then things just kind of got hard. Stress and anxiety and relationship issues and time, it wasn't the same. Like things just kind of got in the way. Like, it's amazing how negative impact, emotions, repetitiveness, all negative things can affect your ability to do something. Because I would just there were times where I'd just rather hang out in my room. I'd still be motivated enough to go out and get a walk in, but for the rest of it, I just didn't really want to do much. And it's been a while, but there will be a time where I'm sure it'll come back, because it isn't something that I just want to give up. But you've got to have that motivation in your mind, in that brain, that chemical mix to keep yourself going. You got to get that right dopamine amount. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you found this very interesting, helpful. My Twitter handle is at ADHD and CPTSD. My website, of course, www.livingwithadhdandcptsd.ca. You can email me at my new email address, livingwithadhdandcptsd@gmail.com. If you want to support me, if you really find these episodes and these podcasts extremely helpful and life-changing or motivational, and you love listening to them, then help me out. Give me a donation. Give me a tip. Go to ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/livingwithadhdand and CPTSD. You can also subscribe to my podcast. I come out with early releases of episodes, plus I'm going to have a lot of bonus material coming out real soon. I've been working on some ideas, and I'm going to have them out. I plan on interviewing a bunch of guests, coaches, other people with ADHD. I'm hoping to get a psychologist on one day here real soon, because I want to hear from their point of view. If there's anything you want to talk about, anything that you're interested in, or if you just want to say hello, contact me at the different addresses that I have given you. I really hope to hear from you. I love doing this for you guys. All right. Have a good afternoon. Stay tuned for those who like my CPTSD episodes. That's the next day tomorrow. Okay, bye everybody.